Hello, good people of YouTube. Sealord here, and today we have the newly released Tier 9 Premium Italian Cruiser, the Michelangelo import to review for you guys today. The Michelangelo is the current dockyard ship that you can grind through in patch 12.11. And she is quite the interesting ship. She is very unique for a couple of reasons. First off, yes, those are the main battery turrets in the midsection of the ship. And those are quite a number of secondaries you see at the front. In addition to the, I believe those are 152s, we'll see here in a second. You also have the traditional 90mm secondaries scattered throughout the ship, as you can see. And yeah, this is the most, one of the most odd setups I've seen in a minute on a ship premium or a tech line, but she has quite the potential to be the secondary cruiser, and we'll be taking a look at that today. Of course, you can earn her in the dockyard by grinding through it or buying your way through the event. Speaking of buying your way through the event, that's how I was able to get this ship import to review for you guys. I am not a CC nor supported by or affiliated with Wargaming in any way, shape, or form. So the generous Patreons, whose names should be coming up on screen right now, make this ship review and all ship reviews possible on the channel. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so, besides watching the streams and videos, is Patreon. A link to that will be down below. Of course, I would highly recommend you just grind through the dockyard, because if you want to purchase this outright, you'll be around 300 US, depending upon where you are at in the world. It is quite an expensive thing to buy your way through, so just buy the 6 starter packs, which is definitely what you want to get if you are planning on buying your way through this. That's the best way to save money, and then just play your way through the event. You have all of this patch, next patch, and then 2 weeks, I believe, into the patch after that to actually finish the ship. You can grind through it for this patch and next patch, and then the first 2 weeks of the patch after that, I believe 13.1, you have that much time to decide if you want to buy the rest of the stages to complete the Michelangelo. So we're going to take a look at her bits and bobs today, go over her characteristics, and then move into a voiceover gameplay review. So let's go ahead and take a look at her. Very interesting looking ship. Our department is of course carrying it once again. Very nice details up and down the ship. The Italian ships are very, very pretty. This one, it's still kind of there for me, but it is a little odd looking, of course. Like the Roma, Napoli, and the Venezia are some of the best looking ships in the game, in my opinion. This one, however, looks a little odd, of course. Alright, let's go ahead and dive into her characteristics and such. So, the exterior, first off. If you do get this ship in the dockyard, you will receive the war paint camo, which is this. Very clean, lots of Italian banners, and a very starch white for the upper armor belt and the deck along with the superstructure. It looks like there's no band or any of the crew standing about like what we normally see in the war paint schemes that we get with the other ships. Huh. Very odd. Alright. Maybe they just couldn't find anywhere to stick them on the ship. I don't know. But we are going to be running just the default perma camo because this is more realistic in my opinion, and going into battle with banners hanging off the side of the ship and stuff, I'm not too much into camos like that, so we'll stick with the default camo. At least it does have a camo. Again, a lot of newer premium ships, they've just been painting them gray because, yeah, but glad that that's there. Alright, for the economic bonuses, it is a tier 9 fully premium ship. You can tell by the icon being painted in. So you're going to get the tier 9 baked in premium economy on top of the bonus package that does come with the ship, a 10% earning to your credits and a 100% earning to your various XPs. And I am running the blue boosters on my Michelangelo because, well, Kitakami, and we need that free XP to convert to Research Bureau points, so that's why I'm running the blues, and of course always, want some credits as well. So with the end screens that you see for the Michelangelo in this video, this is what we are running. Alright, the armor. Front end is 25mm for the bow, 25mm deck, 40mm upper, 100mm mid, and 200mm main belt armor. Now this is a cruiser, of course, right? So don't be expecting battleship levels of armor, but that's some pretty chunky armor for a cruiser. And the torpedo bulges are 27mm. Stern is 25 all around, and so is the stern deck. So obviously you can't, go in and bounce the main battleship caliber guns with this armor, but it's pretty decently well protected for a cruiser. The Citadel is... it is exposed, but... oh. Hold up. Is it... okay, wow. No type of turtleback armor or anything there. You do have some of this void armor going on here, so you got this big old gap between the armor belt and the Citadel. So that does have the potential to just, eat shells. Kind of like the French armor scheme. I guess we'll see how well that goes in battle. But I'm assuming, of course, if you catch it from close enough range, probably it's going to go right through that. And if you are turning hard over, the ship will of course roll, and you can get underneath that belt, and that's probably going to be a Citadel hit no matter what. And the Citadel side, all up and down, is 60mm, right? Yeah, alright. So, and on top of that, you got 40mm of deck armor, and the roof is 110, so that's fairly decent. Alright, so, oh, and her turrets too. The turret faces are 250s, turret tops are 110s, the side is 125, 100, and then the back is 125, and the barbettes are 250s, and I don't know, it's still weird seeing the main battery guns just shoved in between the stack like that. That's so weird. Speaking of the main battery guns, you do have 8 320mm guns in these two turrets in quad mounts, a very French thing occurring on an Italian ship. They have a 24-second reload time. That's a long time for a cruiser. And a maximum exposure of 191 meters with a range of 17 kilometers. And the sap shells do a maximum damage of 10,250 with 82 millimeters of pin. So that's pretty good. The AP does a maximum damage of 9,700. And both the AP and the sap come out the tubes at 830 meters a second. So with sap, typically you want to keep the sap munition loaded because it does have a higher, that's my Discord, not yours, it does have a higher alpha rating than the AP, so unless you can, for sure, Citadel, whatever it is you're aiming at, typically you want to keep sap loaded. That's only 8 guns on a cruiser too, tier 9 cruiser, the 24-second reload. That's not that great, but the ship is not about the main guns, about the secondaries. So you have 20 of these 90mm secondary guns with a 4.2 second reload time, maximum range of 7 kilometers, maximum damage of 1900 with a 26mm pin rating. So you can pin most of the cruisers you're going to run into, the destroyers, the battle cruisers you're going to run into, but of course the battleships you're not going to be able to pin with the 90mm guns because, well, they're 32 for the extremities. The superstructure you will be able to pin, so there is that. And the 152s, however, do fix that problem. So they have a reload time of 9.6 seconds, a maximum range of 7 kilometers, and then they do 3,650 maximum damage, and they can pin 42 millimeters of armor. So these are going to be the fellas that are going to be damaging the battleships and the cruisers with heavier armor. You got 12 of them for 9.6 second reload time. That's not bad. And this is starting. We haven't put any modules or commander skills on this guy yet. So that's pretty good. And again, 7 kilometer base range, which means once you build into it, oh yeah, we're going to be cooking with gas. You get torpedoes as well, 2x3 of the 533 torps, I'm sorry, I thought that was reload time for a second. That's the 180 time. A reload time of 120 seconds, so 2 minute space, 8 kilometer range, 20,433 maximum damage, 72 knot top speed, that's pretty good, and a detection range of 1.7 kilometers. That's nice. And you do get 2 flights of the depth charges with 1 aircraft per flight, and they drop 2 bombs per charge for a maximum damage of 4,200, and they reload in 30 seconds. What's the range? I probably said already. 7 kilometers. Ooh, that's a little short. A defense, 4.6 kilometers, so forget about that. I'm saying that because by the time the planes fly in and out of that, you've barely done damage to them, but that's pretty Italian. Maneuverability, the top speed is 33 knots. There's a turning circle of 830 meters and a rudder shift time of 14.4 seconds, so a fairly quick ship there. Not overtly quick by cruiser standards, but, you know, it's not getting left behind, which is the important bit. Consumables 13.5 base. Ooh. We can build into that and make that a lot better. Alright, for the consumables, you do get hydroacoustic search, which is a godsend on a secondary ship. 3.5 kilometer torpedo detect, 5 kilometer ship detect, and it runs for 100 seconds and reloads in 120 seconds. That's my Discord again. I am quite popular, it seems. The smoke, you do get the exhaust smoke generator. It's active for 40 seconds, and the puffs have 10 seconds to disperse. The radius is half a kilometer, and it reloads in 150 seconds, 2 charges of that base. And then you get a heal that regens 330 HP per second, is active for 28 seconds, and reloads in 80 seconds. And of course you get damage con, typical cruiser damage con here, 5-second runtime, 60-second cooldown time. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get a commander module build on my Michelangelo, and I'll meet you guys right back here. Alrighty, let's start the modules, shall we? So I went with Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 because this increases the survivability of our secondary battery guns by 100%. And if you look at where they are on the ship, I mean, your 2 152 turrets are right here. They're going to be eating a lot of shells, so we want to make sure they stay in the fight because that's where most of the firepower is in the ship. And then I went with Damage Con Mod 1 because fires suck. This decreases our chance of catching on fire by 5% and decreases our chance of flooding by 3%. I then went with Secondary Battery Mod 1, which increases the secondary firing range by 20% and increases the accuracy by 20% as well. Well, increases the dispersion by 20% as well. Then we went with Damage Control Mod 2 because fires still suck. This reduces the recovery time for fires and flooding by 15%. We then took Concealment Systems Mod 1, which decreases our detection by 10%, and, well, the smaller detection you have, the less you're going to be spotted, and the more you can control your engagement range. And then I took Auxiliary Armaments Mod 2, which decreases the secondary battery reload time by 20%. It also buffs the AA while, you know, you equip it, so that's pretty neat as well. Increases the continuous damage by 15% and the damage from AA explosions by 15%. It increases the amount of flak in the air by 2 when DFAA is enabled, but we don't have DFAA, so that's kind of null and void. Again, we're mainly after the buff to the reload time. Alright, and then for the commander skills, I took Last Stand, which will allow the rudder and the engine to stay active even when it's knocked out, which in a cruiser, that's your lifeblood, so you definitely want to take this. And then I took, come on game, Consumable Enhancements, which increases the runtime of the hydro and the smoke generator by 10% in the case of the Michelangelo, and I mean, that's cool. You get hydro and smoke with this ship, and you want to make sure you make the most out of it. Then for 3-point skills, I took Adrenaline Rush, which of course decreases the reload time by 0.2% for each 1% of HP that you lose in your ship. So of course, the more damage you take, the faster your guns reload. I also took Superintendent for an additional charge of the heal, the hydro, and the smoke. Those are very useful consumables, and having more of them on hand is always a good thing. Then, of course, we took Pack-a-Punch, which increases our secondary battery firing range by 20% and our torpedo damage by 15%, getting our secondaries out further and getting our torpedoes up when it comes to damage. For the 4-point skill, I took Top Grade Gunner, which decreases the secondary battery reload time by another 10%, and also when a ship is inside your secondary range, your detection range, your standard detection range, you get an 8% buff to the main battery reload time as well. And then finally, for our last 4-point skill, I took Concealment Expert, which reduces our detection range by another 10%. There were some other skills that I was very much considering taking. Of course, Survivability Expert, that gives you another 450 HP per tier. And maybe Heavy Sap, because it will buff the main battery sap damage by 10%, but you eat a pretty big damage to your concealment, so I don't know, maybe for like a goofy build. But I think this is right now what we're going to run with. If there's something you'd recommend, please leave in the comments down below. I may try that out later. But this is essentially my Napoli build, and they're both secondary Italian ships, so let's rock it. What that does to the ship, for the guns, the secondary guns now get out to 10.5 kilometers. The 90mm guns have a 2.9 second base reload time, and then the 152s have a 6.6 second reload time now as well. And then the torpedoes with that pack-a-punch, they now do 23,498 maximum damage. And then the ship goes 34.7 knots with the speed flag, if you're wondering, and concealment's now down to 11 kilometers. So even without the exhaust smoke, you're still pretty much going to be on top of them with your secondaries when you're spotted. So that's that going to be good. So we're going to go ahead and take the Michelangelo into battle, and we'll meet you guys there. Alright guys, voiceover Sealord here, and the Michelangelo. Well, oh well, there are some high highs with this ship, but there are also some low lows. Wargaming clearly was in the mindset of, oh my god, we cannot have another Napoli situation on our hands, because Napoli is an incredibly strong secondary Italian cruiser. So when they went into making the Michelangelo, they clearly didn't want to make a stronger Napoli. And, well, the ship has, on paper, a higher secondary DPM than Napoli. And, man, they made this ship pay for those secondaries in several ways that aren't great at all. So let's start with the guns. The main battery guns, to be exact. They're not great, and that's putting it mildly. 24-second reload on 8 guns, even though they're 320mm guns, and I know they have SAP, which is of course a very consistent munition type that can do high damage to lightly armored targets. I understand all of that. It's still too long of a reload on these guns for a couple of reasons. First off, again, only 8 main battery guns. That's yeah, the Siegfried over there with 6 15-inch guns has a faster reload than this ship does with 8 320mm guns. And the Siegfried's guns are a hell of a lot more accurate than the Michelangelo's. And yeah, that should tell you a lot right there. On top of that as well, my god, the turret angles are just bad. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can't really rephrase it any other way. The turret angles are terrible. And, I mean, yeah, when you put your main battery guns in the midsection of the ship, yeah, you're going to have absolutely crappy turret angles. But that's compounded by the fact that you have a long reload for the number of guns. The guns aren't terribly accurate. They're not terribly inaccurate either. But then you have a 17-kilometer base range, which is, yeah, that's bad by tier 9 large cruiser levels. So yeah, put all that together, and that's the Michelangelo's main battery guns. You have to show way too much broadside to use all the guns. And even when you're showing a lot of skin, I found myself saying out loud a couple of times, like, my god, how bad are these angles? Because I felt like I was, you know, way too far out in terms of my angle, and the rear turret still wasn't on target. So you gotta show enough broadside to get slapped in order to use both turrets, which does suck. And the turrets do 360. That is the one saving grace of these guns, because if these turrets had to like take the long way around to get to, you know, from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship, it would be almost unplayable. So that does save it, but that doesn't save it from the fact that it's got terrible main gun angles. And you might be saying, well, Sealord, this ship is clearly not about the main battery guns. It's about the secondaries. Yeah, you're not wrong. You are 100% not wrong on that. This ship is most definitely about the secondary battery guns. However, dear viewer, as you should be aware, the conditions for you to use your secondary battery, they do not often manifest themselves in a regular manner. Because, of course, with how Tier 9 and Tier 10, and Super Ship games, keep in mind, this is a Tier 9 ship, you can see Super Ships with the ship. With how those matches go, it's a lot of sitting in the back, it's a lot of waiting, it's a lot of nothing happening. And you have a 17-kilometer maximum range on 8 guns with a 24-second reload that, yes, they do fire sap, but in order to fire all of your guns on target, you got to show a lot of broadside. And the cruiser is not anywhere near the agility levels of Napoli, so it takes a second for you to, pop out and fire those guns. Then, you got to drag yourself back around before you can, or you will get citadeled or pinned by whatever ship is firing at you. Yeah. And again, a 17-kilometer maximum range. So, for a very long amount of time in matches, you're going to be sitting there trying to either get into secondary gun range or dealing with these rather frustrating main battery guns. And yes, you can take Sansonetti, and once you get a kill, that does extend the main battery range out, and that does make it a little bit more, comfortable to play in the current meta. But of course, not everyone has Sansonetti, right? So I'm looking at it from that point of view. Now, that is, of course, going to be a situation that you find yourself in quite often in higher tier gameplay and random battles. However, that is not something that just affects the Michelangelo. That's any secondary focus ship. However, look at the other secondary focus ships: the GK, the Pommern, the Ruprecht, where do I go on from here? What's it called? The other Italian Tier 9 secondary, the Giuseppe Verdi. They all still at least have what I would call workable main battery guns. Like, they have decent firepower for their tier. Pommern's got 12 15-inch guns. The Giuseppe Verdi has 16-inch guns, 9 16-inch guns. And yes, their main battery guns aren't all that accurate, but at least, they tend to have workable ranges and workable reload times. The Michelangelo, while on paper it might be a workable reload time and a workable main battery gun range, but add it to the fact that the main battery angles are so bad, it's not good in my opinion. So there's that. However, looking at the secondaries, when this thing does get into secondary gun range, my God, can it put in some work. When you have 12 of the 152mm guns firing their sap, good lord, there were some times when I was playing this ship, I really didn't know if it was the 152s doing the damage or the 320s, because I fired at let's say a light cruiser, and I got a couple of shells with the 320s, but at the same time, quite a few of the 152 shells landed, and the guy gets chunked for like 6k. That could be the 152s, that could be the 320s, And yeah, the DPM is absolutely insane when you can get into range, and you are going to melt light cruisers and DDs and even some heavy cruisers. You're going to just obliterate them with the secondaries. Even battleships, again, those 12 152mm guns, they can pin 42 millimeters of armor. That's more than enough to deal with the extremities of most of the battleships. So like the bow, the stern, the upper belt, and the superstructure, that's all below 42 millimeters. So those 152s can get in there and they will pin them, and it's a good, consistent damage. And yeah, it is terrifying when you do get into this ship's element. The issue is, of course, getting into said element. The match you're watching in the background, very fortunately, some fellows remember the rules. They went up the mid on two brothers. So I got to go, deal with them. Then I went down the mid and back up around up top, and, you'll see what happened there. So yeah, no doubt about that. When this thing can use its secondaries, it's going to put in the work. It's just, again, having those conditions happen, which in random battles, you're going to go a few matches without that happening for some time, and then you'll get, a party match, right? And then you can go on about your day. So I could definitely see for, ranked, which is typically more close quarters combat, oh yeah, this is going to be a top pick for rank, most definitely. Yeah. And the torpedoes too. I mean, the torpedoes are very, very usable. 8 kilometer range, 72 knots, 23K alpha with the pack-a-punch skill. Yeah, those torpedoes pack one hell of a punch. Go figure, right? Just like with the Venezia and the Napoli, definitely the ace up your sleeve in those brawls when you want to, level the playing field. Because despite how tanky this ship is, which we'll get to that in a moment, it is still just a cruiser, right? But that torpedo, oh yeah, them torpedoes help level the playing field real quick. So those, of course, probably the couple of main things you guys want to know about. Now, the armor, it's nowhere near as good as Napoli. Napoli, I don't know what that ship is made out of, but it just doesn't care about any battleship caliber gun unless you catch it perfectly flat broadside. The Michelangelo, it's not made out of the same stuff. I mean, as we saw too, the Citadel is exposed. It's not behind a lot of armor. You do have a little bit of a void going on there, where I did find myself from time to time, getting the French effect, where that one shell that you thought for sure is going to Citadel, you just, plinks into your torpedo protection and doesn't do anything. But in situations where the Napoli would have not cared about getting shot, the Michelangelo cared. And again, that's also due to the fact that you have to show a lot more side to get all your guns on target. So when you're trying to do that, you have to be very, very, very aware about what's around you, because you can and will get slapped if you get caught slipping. So that is a major, major, major thing you need to know before you decide to grind through this ship or not. So, but when you can angle, like in the close quarter situations when, you're relying on the secondary guns to do their thing, and you're angling, yeah, obviously, it's pretty good at that. I mean, he still has a 25mm nose, right? So the common battleship caliber guns at that tier are going to go right through it. Let's run to, like a Mecklenburg or like a Brandenburg or something like that. Then, yeah, you can face tank those guys, but you can't sit there and face tank like you're in a battleship or anything like that. Another frustrating thing, too, is that when you are angling like that in close quarters combat, you want to use your guns, but you can't because, they're in the middle of the ship. They're behind the bridge superstructure. So you can't use your guns when your secondaries are really going into work and you're having to angle, and that's frustrating. And, yes, they are frustrating guns to use, but I want to use them, right? And yeah, now once you get into like the drive-bys and stuff, when you get around the corner, you can blast them, which it's finally a relief that you can do that. But that's just another little bit of frustration in there. But again, that's in the design of the ship. That's obvious, right? But just again, remember that you got that wonky gun setup. So, hydro and the smoke. God's wombo combo, right? You got the smoke going, you got the hydro going, you can push DDs. The great thing too, secondaries firing in smoke don't increase your bloom. So when you got the smoke going, you got the hydro going, you can see them 5 kilometers away. Your secondaries are ripping them. They can't see you because again, secondaries don't make your bloom go out in smoke. Everything is at peace in the world when that is happening, right? And of course, the Hydra is just great too for the current meta because submarines are a thing. You can spot submarines with it. You can drive over them, drop your ASW on top of them. Again, you can confidently push smoke with those destroyers sitting there. They get caught in your Hydro, secondaries rip them. It's great. So many times in like Napoli and Schroeder do I wish that those ships had Hydro. The Michelangelo does. And that's probably another reason why they made the main battery gun so bad, because it had to have hydro, or they wanted to give it hydro. So, yeah, overall, a numerical rating for the ship, I would give it this is really difficult for me, because I really, really want to give it an 8. But the reality of random battles today, oh, man, So, overall, I would give this ship, let's go with an 8. I'm going to give it an 8. I am going to give it an 8. If you like what you see here, if you like the secondary playstyle, and you accept the frustrations of trying to deal with today's meta in a ship like this, in a secondary ship, it's an 8. It is one of the best secondary ships in game, no doubt about that. Realistically, if they gave it a normal turret layup, or even if they graph speed it and gave it a turret in the front and a turret in the back, I would probably give it a 9. Because at least you can use one turret in battle, and you could probably get better turret angles out of that setup than you could out of this turret setup. But yes, it's an 8. The pros being the 320 guns, when they do hit with the sap and with the AP, they do hurt. But, you know, of course, it's getting to use them, but we'll get to that in the cons. Of course, god tier secondaries. The range is a little lackluster, but it's still, again, you have the hydroacoustic smoke. You have the smoke, you have the hydroacoustic wombo combo to work with there, and the ship is pretty stealthy. I mean, your detection range is half a kilometer away from your secondary range, so I wouldn't call it bad secondary range. It's quite good. So yeah, you got that going there. Hydro, smoke, and it is reasonably fast. It's not too fast, not too slow. It's just right, in my opinion. But of course, the cons. The turret angles are atrocious on the main battery guns. They have a long reload time. That's just absolute just pain there. The armor isn't as tough as it really needs to be to prevent you from getting slapped when you show your side, but again, that goes back to the guns. So it does lead to frustration when you are trying to play it in the current meta in random battles. The AA as well, 4.6 kilometer AA, I mean, again, that's standard across the Italian nation, but it's still bad. Doesn't matter that it's standard, it is a bad range to try and work with, especially for a ship that can see super ships. Like, this ship can see super CVs, right? This can see the Eagle, this can see the USS US, so that is not great there. And I don't know what it is, but like, my main battery guns get knocked out a ton on this ship. And I mean, like, I get that, you know, you're getting shot and your main battery guns are going to get knocked out, but they get knocked out a bunch. I'm not sure if it's the armor scheme or if it's the turret thickness. I mean, like, you know, again, it's not uncommon to happen, but it was happening a lot when I was playing this ship. So I'm assuming that's with the armor or something, just the way it's set up. It might be a coding issue or something like that right now, but right now I believe it's probably just the armor, the layout of the armor of the turrets. You would think that the turrets in the middle of the ship with the superstructure on one side, on either side of them, wouldn't really get knocked out that much, but they were getting knocked out a bunch for me. So yeah, I understand, you know, it's got a lot of goodies, it's got a lot of secondary firepower, it's got the hydro, it's got the smoke. They had to give up something for it, and it was definitely the turret angles and the comfortability of having a consistent main battery guns that you normally get with cruisers. So yeah, also I felt like I was getting set on fire a lot in this thing, and like more than I get set on fire in my GK. I'm not taking off points for that. I'm just saying that it felt like that was happening a lot, but I guess that's because, you know, you're playing in the front. It's the new ship. It's a dockyard ship. Everyone wants to shoot you. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Michelangelo. I would highly recommend grinding through it. It's worth the grind in my opinion. It's worth the 6,000 dubs. You get all these goodies too with it as well. I should have shown a image of it in port, but I'll show another image of it here because I'm just now remembering. You do get a bunch of stuff with it, and I think like just grinding through it, getting these rewards for 6,000 dubs, big ups, and then you get the ship at the end. So I do think it's a ship that's worth the grind. Do keep in mind too, if you are thinking about buying your way through it, you don't get really a decent amount of steel for it. You still get steel for it, right? But it's not as good as the previous dockyards worth of steel if you're thinking about buying through it and getting the steel afterwards. But just for the ship, 100% worth the grind. Get the starter pack for 6k if you like secondary ships. If you don't like secondary ships, even when more of a normal cruiser, of course, hard pass on this one, guys. So that is my opinion on the Michelangelo. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you thinking about grinding through it yourself or paying through it, or what do you think about our Renaissance man here? Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and have a wonderful rest of your week. A wonderful Thursday, actually. Joke's on me. It's Wednesday right now. Wonderful Thursday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.